Careful.
We that dreamed, we in nightmare, we that are one. Thought by thought, destiny unwinds. She is Xesht.
Need more time.
We split the thread of realities. Our flesh is not ours, but yours beckons hither. We that failed.
Hey, Mason here. So I'm just going to speak over this map showcase, just to save you a bit of time. But the reason why I decided to make this build was because I felt that there was a core issue with mapping on totems. So recently you might have seen that Palstron made a video on Sunder Totem's Titan, and that was a big inspiration for me to look into making this build. But the issue with that is I watched his Breach Showcase, and it's pretty good with upheaval on the totems. But it's nothing like what Deadeyes are doing with Herald of Ice, or basically what every Herald build can do. So based on that, I decided that I would look into using totems for bossing and trying to develop a framework for mapping that I have achieved with this build. So the key is that they're clunky. It's like there's delayed damage with the totems. I'm not a big fan of that. They're quite delayed in PoE 2, much more delayed than PoE 1. And like the totem builds can do breach, but they're not like insane at breach. So I'll also just chat a little bit about the cost of the build. So why is this build so cheap? 25 divines to get this up running. It could do tier 4 Xesht, 8 out of Xesht, and I've been doing like tier 15 to 18 maps, no issues at all. So I did show in the previous, like a few minutes ago, there's a breakdown of the cost. But the main reason why this is so cheap is because you're playing Gemling, so you're strength stacking. This means that you don't need to care about the reduced attribute requirement mod on your maces, your two-hand maces, because Giant's Blood. Which means that you can basically buy any mace for 40 exalts with Giant's Blood. For your totem swap, that is. Another key thing is that you can actually hit level 40, like level 40 gem level on your totem, without needing to buy Prism of Belief, which has gone up in price a lot since Palstron's video. And so that's also something else that makes this build really cheap. So the idea is that you have a level 20 gem, then you have 2 weapons with +7, that's 14 levels, so you're at 34 levels. Then you get 3 from your amulet, +3 melee skill gems. You get 2 from your gloves, +2 melee skill gems. That puts you at 39. And then your Gemling Ascendancy gives you your last level to get you to level 40. The one benefit that this has over the Titan setup that Palstron used with Prism of Belief is that with the Prism of Belief, you need to either buy an Ancestral Totem Prism of Belief or a Sunder Prism of Belief. So only one of the skills will be level 40, while the Sunder that's inside the totem will only be level 39. So you're missing out on some damage there. But the Gemling Ascendancy applies to all skill gems. So there's no issues with that at all. You can see on screen right now, this is the breach clear. It's pretty ridiculous because of the way Herald of Ice works with that shatter ring. That's likely to get nerfed. But we'll see what happens in terms of tech once that actually does get nerfed, if it does or not. I think that it might not get nerfed because it requires a ring slot, and with Ingenuity, a ring slot is quite expensive, like in terms of opportunity cost on the gear. But it really depends on how they're going to nerf it. They might just make Heralds not inflict ailments like at all, which then this would also not work because you won't be able to inflict chill with the Herald. But I do remember that Khan mentioned in one of his podcasts that there's some tech that he's looking into. So maybe keep an eye out on Khan's stream. Maybe he has some warrior tech for clear that we can use for this build as well, because Magma Barrier is an attack. So one more thing that you can do with this build is if you do want to buy a Prism of Belief, you can actually drop the Gemling Ascendancy node and you can get the 30% reduced cost, which makes your totem cost even cheaper. In terms of how we're actually solving the cost of totems, at the moment you just spam your potion. Like this is not really, you have to invest so much into life regen to actually make it worthwhile that I really don't think it's worth it. Especially with the Sunder shield giving you so much life on block. And you can see on the video right now, there's a quick map showcase. You can see that the second boss just gets instantly one shot. His HP bar disappears, and then the last boss just gets killed like more or less instantly. So the build does quite a lot of damage and it maps extremely well, and it's quite tanky. Alright, so if I hop into game now, I'm just going to talk a little bit about skill choices and some of the links, and some of the tech as well. So why Resonating Shield? So in Palstron's video, he was using Armor Breaker, and Armor Breaker fundamentally hits for more armor, like it breaks more armor per attack. But Resonating Shield is an extremely good defensive tool that allows you to break armor while you're using it, because it says that you're blocking, you will block all incoming blockable hits. So while you're using this skill on the boss, all their normal attacks that can be blocked, so non-AoE attacks, will be blocked with no issues. Some of the links: Martial Tempers for more attack speed, so you apply it more often. Armor Explosion helps a little bit with clear, but it may not be necessary. Demolishes more armor break. Rage is just rage on hit. Unbreakable makes it so that this bar down here, the stun bar, fills up less. So how does this tech work with the clear, basically? How does the Magma Barrier clear work? So Magma Barrier says when you raise your shield, you infuse it with magma. When you block an attack, it sprays the magma and it does a bunch of damage. It has absolutely ridiculous scaling with gem level. So you can see that my Magma Barrier is doing 100k damage in total, and it says down here 40k, 32 to 47k is cold damage, and that's because of cold infusion here. So with Magma Barrier that hits hard enough to kill the mob on the first hit, and you have cold infusion to apply chill, you can combine that with this ring here, says enemies chilled by your hits can be shattered, and you can combine it with Herald of Ice for ridiculous clear, like you can see in the breach before. What are the other gem links for? This is for levels. Levels is the best scaling for this skill. Exploit Weakness makes it that when the enemy is broken, you actually deal more damage to them, and when you block, the little AoE pulse from Resonating Shield actually breaks their armor, so that if you hit them and they don't die immediately, then your next proc of Magma Barrier will do 50% more damage and just kill them. Close combat works because it's within more meter, and Magma Barrier's range is already quite short. I'm not sure if it says on here in particular, but it's like basically a small cone in front of you. It's probably like 1 to 2 meters. And Ice Bite is so that when you hit an enemy with your Cold Infusion Magma Barrier, it freezes them, you gain the extra cold damage, which then helps with your Heralds to do more damage, and buffs your next Magma Barriers to do even more damage. So people were not using this tech before, but Totem snapshot with the second weapon set. I'm sure people all know this already, but Berserk also snapshots as well. And for the easiest way for me to show you this is with my Precision gem. So I've got a Precision slotted in my Berserk gem, and we can have a look at the accuracy on the totems. So you can see here, I'm going to place my totems down, then I'll swap to my weapon set 1, and then we're going to have a look at the accuracy on the totems. It says 1594. And then if I take off this, you can see that it says 1226. So the aura snapshots with the second weapon set, which means that you get free 50%, 55% increased rage effect with no cost at all. You don't lose the life per second because you're actually not reserving rage, because all you're doing is you're placing 3 totems and then you're swapping back to your main weapon set, which activates the rage aura. And this is basically just free damage with no cost at all. I should also quality this up. That reminds me. A Time of Need is more, I think it's pretty useless, to be honest. It heals you every now and then. It removes the curse. It removes the debuff. Whatever. There's not really many good auras that you can run. Like you could run Overwhelming Presence, but because you don't actually need to freeze, you only need to chill, which is basically guaranteed on cold damage. It doesn't really actually help that much. Fast forward just makes it so that the cooldown is shorter. And there's a little bit of anti-synergy with some of the jewels on the tree, especially ones that are like increased skill effect duration. I think there's one over here. Because skill effect duration helps because it makes your totem last longer, but then it also has a little bit of anti-synergy because it makes this cooldown a little bit longer as well. But it's whatever. Blink and Ingenuity is just a standard blink swap. Not much to say there. Totem links are also very standard. It's a it's boss setup only, so you use it only on rares and only on map bosses. When you see a rare, you block, and then you just put your totem down, and then you swap back to your weapon set 1. Sunder, Brutality, Heavy Swing, Conk, Inspiration. Inspiration is needed because these totems cost a ridiculous amount of mana. I think even with Inspiration, it's 700 life. And I'm actually not anointing Deep Trance. I'm anointing Parrying Motion for more block chance and movement speed. But Deep Trance is also a decent anoint over here for reduced cost of skills. And I think I also mentioned before that you can actually drop this +1 skill gem level if you get a 21 Corrupt on the Ancestral Warrior Totem or a Prism of Belief, and you can take this reduced cost of skills to make it even cheaper. Up to you, personal preference. Leaf Slam is mainly used for the Holy Descent, for the Conk ground, but you can actually give it a bit of damage, and if you have Ice Bite up, you can actually just pop packs in the Breach as well, which you have seen. And finally, Orb of Storms is just entirely for Rage. You place it down, it gives you Rage. You can see that it stacks up the Rage here for free. Font of Rage, Persistence, Font of Blood, and Expanse. It just gives you also a bunch more health regen as well. So I'll now talk a little bit about the passive tree. So the idea behind the passive tree, quickly, before I mention that, my block is only at 65%, and you might be like, hey, that's not capped, right? But there's actually this node on the tree that's extremely efficient for block builds. 25% increased chance to block if you've blocked with active block recently. And using Resonating Shield, which you're using all the time because of Magma Barrier, basically means 100% uptime of this on maps, like when you're mapping basically. And on bosses, you're holding Resonating Shield anyways, so that's also permanently active because you want to hold this down to break the boss's armor for your Sunder totems. Alright, bit about the skill tree. Why aren't we pathing up to these totem nodes up here? So this requires so much investment in terms of points, and you're getting a bunch of increased totem placement speed, and yes, it's quality of life, but instead I've opted into taking these nodes here, which is 40%, and one node here, which is another 20%, so 60% in total. That's good enough for me on totem placement speed. In terms of weapon swaps, so my weapon swap currently is we want to scale Herald damage and we want to scale Magma Barrier damage, which are both attacks. So we've got this thing here, which is entire purpose is for Herald damage. We've got the life nodes, some of the life nodes on the main weapon swap because you're placing your totems and you're swapping back to your weapon swap 1, which has these life nodes. So you've got the increased strength and the increased life here. We've got block nodes here, as well as these block nodes here. And we have these block nodes here as well for more damage. This is just more damage per chance of block. And we're anointing this over here, so that gives us block chance, as well as movement speed. So it helps with going really fast. For our weapon swap 2, just swap my weapon over. We're doing all this standard totem stuff. So we're taking this totem cluster here, this totem cluster here, these aftershock clusters, which actually work because of Dreamcore's video. He's talked about this. These totem clusters here, and these totem clusters here. And you might be wondering, why not this totem cluster here? So from my testing, this regen life per second when you have a totem actually snapshots to only when you're holding your second weapon set. So it's actually a useless node. You don't want to take this node. And I can show you that quickly briefly if I just unspec my nodes here. I'll just grab 2 points from here, put them into here. And we'll take a look at my health regen. So 180, I'm placing my totems. It's rocking 260. I swap back to weapon set 1. 190. So it went up a little bit, but like it seems like it actually snapshots in your second weapon set, so it's actually quite a useless node in my opinion. So don't bother with those 2 points. Instead, I just take these increased placement speed ones instead. In terms of, I think that mostly actually just covers the skill tree. In terms of what defensives you have, it's mainly just a shit ton of life and a little bit overcapped fire res. Once you get a few more levels, you can take these fire res, these max res nodes here. These are quite good. You can also take this random strength node here that I haven't taken because I had to unspec it for point purposes. I was running out of points. But yeah, those two would be more defensives. And yeah, that's more or less in terms of like the actual defensives. You are running armor, but armor is so bad at the moment that I'm not really stacking any armor. Oh, and this node right here that people were like, this node seems pretty shit. So when you're holding Resonating Shield on the boss, okay, so first contextualize, you have 75% block in maps, so you're never dying to anything that's not, that's blockable, sorry. So nothing can hit you, you will never die to anything that's blockable. So the only thing that you would die to is AoEs, because they aren't blockable. And this node here perfectly synergizes with this build, because you're holding Resonating Shield up on bosses like 90% of the time, which means that you're blocking every single blockable attack, and every single non-blockable attack, you're trying to dodge roll it because you need to get out of it. And if you fuck up your dodge roll, this thing gives you 30% less damage taken from hits. So this is extremely, really good node. In my opinion, this is actually quite underrated. I think people think this is pretty shit, but I'll be honest. The first line dodge roll cannot avoid damage. I don't remember a time where I've actually dodge rolled to get the iframe to avoid a boss attack. I don't think I've remembered that. I don't think I've ever done that before. So in my opinion, this is really good because you're holding up Resonating Shield to block all the time. And I think this is really good on this build. It gives you a lot more tankiness against boss attacks. If you watch some of the Breach, tier 4 Breach Showcase, I got hit by a few of the slams when I was rolling and I barely take any damage at all. And I think I mentioned this before. How do you solve this, like the regen on the cost of the totem? You just pressure Life Flask for the time being. Unfortunately, like there's so much investment needed to get enough life regen to actually make it worth it. And the main issue is that you need a lot of base life regen. And because of this chest piece, this one, I'm putting life in it because I want more life. And it's not regen because I'm not running a regen chest piece. I'll show you, for example, this one here with base regen in the implicit. So this is all basically a summary of the build. I will talk a little bit about like cheap other gear options that I was using, like cheaper ones. So I was running these gloves here before. It's just +2 million skill gems. I was running this mace here before. So the main issue with the Magma Barrier clear setup is that you want gem levels so that Magma Barrier does a lot of damage because Magma Barrier scales really hard of gem levels. But you also want Herald damage because Herald scales off your attack, which means that you want a good weapon, a good physical damage weapon that has levels of melee skill gems. And this gets to the point where if you want something with +7 melee skill gems and like 800 PDPS, 900 PDPS, it's really expensive. So this one here cost me, I think it was 4 divines. I have it in the spreadsheet. I just went -1 to the skill level. I went 6 melee skill levels, and then I just got one with highish PDPS. That's really it. And this is good enough to clear Breach 4. I'll just give you the context damage numbers. You can see here 110,000 damage per Magma Barrier proc and 8,000 Herald damage. And this is pre-Ice Bite, so Ice Bite helps a lot with this. But yeah, that basically summarizes the build. If you want to scale this further, you want a 5-socket chest piece, because then you can put in another maximum life one. Ideally, you want a lot of 2-socket ones. So I'll show you the runes I have. I actually have the life regen runes in these, and people are like, oh, why not the health ones? And in my opinion, you want some life regen. It helps a little bit. You don't want 0, so that you can hold your resonating shield up and you won't take too much damage. So I'm taking some damage when I'm holding it up, but again, you're not holding it up the entire boss fight. You're moving around and rolling, and when you roll, your health will regen back up, and then you'll go back to cap, so you won't actually like kill yourself with the blood magic. So that's why I have these regen nodes in. I've got 1 regen here, 1 regen here, and 1 regen here. These two are both physical. These are all life, and the rest of the gear is just like pretty whatever. So in terms of upgrades, 5-socket, 5% attributes, 5% life. Another big upgrade is against darkness. This is a really bad jewel. It's got 3% strength, and I'm not dividing it on purpose. But you want one with 4% strength, and you want one with 1% life. So it's like small passive nodes grant 1% life, and small notable passive nodes grant 4% strength. That gives you a ton of fucking life. And more or less that's it for upgrades. In terms of damage, I think it's more or less done because you have a level 40 totem. And my level 40 totem is hitting for 335k with no rage up. When I pop my rage up, pop 3 of these, and I'll just let the rage ramp a bit. So you can see it's like 13 stacks of rage. We'll take a quick look again. It's at 45k. It's like bugging out, but 4,600. And then we're going to pop another, going to get to 30 stacks. We're at 30 stacks now. You see, nearly 500k per totem. And because you're breaking the armor, you're guaranteeing a crit with 200 crit damage, because that's how Sunder works. And it also has a 100% hit chance because of the Berserk offhand swap with precision. So yeah, that's it for the build. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. This build has been pretty nuts for the budget, and it turns out it works really well for clearing, and I really hope they don't nerf Herald's next patch, but we all know they will. So we'll see how that goes once they nerf that. Thanks for watching.